Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the session on Python for data science. And I'm so pleased to see all of you here. And we'll be starting with learning Python programming as we begin today's session. And this is part of a 90 Days to Data Scientist course that we have, which we've been offering for the last 8 years. And we've had wonderful turnouts for that course. We come with tremendous degree of experience with, we have a tremendous degree of experience with data science work, data science projects that we do for our customers. So, okay, so let's get started with this thing. I hope all of you can hear me. We have like more than 350 people joining in today. And if you're hearing an echo, I know I just checked my settings because some of you mentioned that we're getting an echo, and please check if you've started YouTube twice. So today's topic is all about, we'll be getting to the Cloudbooks a little later. So if you're not being able to set up the Cloudbooks for now, that's totally fine. You can ignore it for the moment, right? And okay, so let's start with Python and let's start with data science, right? So why do we really need Python, or why do we need data science? And I'm going to start with a very quick keynote and an introduction to why we need some of these services. Now, essentially, Python has become popular over the last few years, and it has become significantly popular predominantly because of its use in data science. Python is not just used for data science. So Python uses go well beyond data science. We have websites that can be deployed on Python. You have web applications in general that a lot of companies deploy on Python. But majority of the users who use Python use it predominantly for data science. Now, data science has been here in the last 4 or 5 years. It has gained a lot of prominence. And data science has gained significant prominence predominantly because of the data that is available. So if you want to do data science, you obviously need data to start with data science. And before this, from 2010 or 2012 onwards, which is around 10 to 8 years ago, most enterprise customers went out, and most large enterprises went out and said, we're going to collect all of our data and aggregate it in one place. And they called this big data. So we said that is big data. Why? Because it's a lot of data that comes together. Although in some situations, big data doesn't have to be a lot of data, right? It could just be small amounts of data, but diverse data, or veracity of data, or variety of data coming from different sources, but not really large, is also considered big data. And we started collecting all of this information, and we started setting up data lakes, data marts, data warehouses, call it anything you want, and NoSQL databases. They're all part of that big data evolution that has happened, right? And we've gone past that, and we've reached a point where all of these companies now have all their data in one place. So they have data aggregated in data storage systems. And now there is a need suddenly to analyze this information. And why do they want to analyze it, right? The answer is very simple, is because they want to drive some business insights after analyzing the information. Now, what that means is I want to do some degree of forecasting. I want to do some degree of predictive analytics. I want to do some degree of process optimization. I want to do some degree of automation. I want to use robotic automation. And all of this is related to bringing in efficiency, et cetera, into the picture. So having said that, we are basically seeing that data science is really, really growing as a market, and it's growing big time as a market in the current context, predominantly because all of these companies have data, and they have this data in one place. It's already aggregated, and there is a sudden need for analyzing all of this. Now, there are 250,000 job vacancies in India alone for data science, right? And that is a significant number of job vacancies for the data science field. And data science field is not just about programming. So a lot of data science really does not involve programming. It predominantly involves, analyzing, basically just doing a business problem solving. So if you have business context and you have the ability to solve that business context, you have achieved something. So without further ado, I have a presentation. So let's get to the presentation. We will do this for this is a 2-hour session. So the first 30 minutes or so, I'll introduce you to the fundamentals of data science, fundamentals of AI. And then I have Suvir with me who will take over on getting us started with Python programming. So by the end of the session, you will be able to run your own Python program. So you would have basically started your Python, you would have basically started your first project in Python. You would have written your Hello World program in Python, right? So I hope all of you are excited. We are really, really excited to host you all today. And let's get started. So, okay. Perfect. Okay. We're starting the screen share. So today's session, we will begin with We'll begin with 90 days. 90 days is a terminology that we use for 90 days to data scientists. So you're part of a flagship course, and the first time ever right now, we are basically giving you the first 14 sessions out of 40 sessions completely free of cost. So all of you joining from YouTube are actually part of a 90 days to data scientist training. It's a 3-month program or a 90 days program that makes you a certified data scientist. You have a choice. You can become a certified data scientist or a certified data science manager. And both options are available. And you're part of this course. And for the first time ever, we're giving you access to the first 14 sessions, which is all the way to data visualization, completely free. This is on YouTube. So all of you are watching this at the moment. And by the end of this entire 3 weeks, you'll be extremely well versed in Python. You will have basic understanding of how machine learning works, and you'll also have the ability to create charts and dashboards. So we want you to go back to your offices and actually create charts and dashboards and show to your colleagues right by the end of the 3rd week, right? So let's get started with Python for data science, which is the first step, right? However, let's take a little bit better understanding of data science, AI, and our world in 2030, right? So we know that from 2010 to 2020, we had the world of big data. We have now moved to the world of AI. So the world in 2030 is all about artificial intelligence. And how so? So essentially, we have to know that the world will make flying cars that makes it faster for us to go see places. But in addition, it will also create hyper-realistic holographic projections to bring the places back to us. So we don't just have to go and look at places, the places will also come to us. What you see is the photo of an elephant, but it's not actually an elephant walking on the street. This is an elephant which is holographically projected. So it appears like the elephant is actually there, but in reality, it's not actually there, right? At the same time, virtual reality will also take us places. And it just put on your headsets, put on your VR headsets, and we'll be in a completely immersive experience. A lot of this augmented reality, virtual reality, holographic projections that you see are actually based on artificial intelligence technologies, right? Many of us don't know, we consider AR and VR to be completely different, but that's not true. It's actually based significantly on the use of machine learning to decide on where to project these images. And by the end of this course, you will have an idea of why machine learning is required for doing some of these things. Now, before we go to there, let's understand the journey a little, right? So in the 1950s, 1960s, when mankind first set foot on the moon, right? Neil Armstrong made the statement that's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind, right? So for Neil Armstrong, it was just 1 foot from the lunar lander to the lunar surface, which is just 1 step. But it was a giant leap for mankind because for the first time ever, we basically set foot on another extraterrestrial object, right? But what's interesting about this phenomenal achievement that we did in the 1950s and 1960s was the Apollo guidance computer had a RAM of 4 kilobytes and a hard drive of 32 kilobytes, right? And just take a sense of what we're looking at here. 4 kilobytes of RAM. Like, can you even buy a cell phone today with 4 kilobytes of RAM? Probably not. Like, the cell phones will have a minimum of 1 gigabyte of RAM, 2 gigabytes of RAM. Cell phones come with 4 gigabytes of RAM. Many computer laptops today get 16 gigabytes of RAM. But the spacecraft that took us to the moon had only 4 kilobytes of RAM, and it had 32 kilobytes of hard drive, right? If we could achieve such phenomenal things with such small compute power, imagine what we can do with the current day compute power that we have, right? Today's most phones have like over 1 million times more RAM than what an Apollo guidance computer had at that moment, right? In fact, Chris Carberry, the CEO and co-founder of ExploreMass, basically made the statement which said, a pocket calculator, in fact, washing machines have more computing power than the computers we used to get Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the surface of the moon, right? This is what it is. But when we look at exploring other bodies, like when we look at going to Mars, stepping foot on Mars, it will most sure shot not be with a 4 kilobyte, RAM computer. Today's SpaceX and all of these are actually AI heavy companies. They understand artificial intelligence. They're using AI in really different ways that will make us achieve things that were completely impossible before, right? So we're basically seeing that mankind's step on Mars will actually be completely driven by AI. It's not going to be a simple program running on a 4 kilobyte RAM computer, right? Now, AI is becoming important, and it is literally helping save lives, and literally so in many ways. But we're going to take one example that's really easy to understand, right? So this is a 1927 photo of the Ford Model T, which was about the time when automobiles were gaining prominence across the globe. 1908 was the first Model T that was created by Ford, and it was the first affordable automobile, dominated sales for years back then. And original was in black color, but it was really difficult to find a photo of this car in black color. So, but with all the advancements that we had, with almost 80, 90 years, 100 years of having automobiles on the road, what we realize is approximately 1.35 million people die each year as a result of road traffic crashes. Right? And this is an yearly count that happens, which is 1.35 million. This is a staggering number, right? This is absolutely a staggering number. And this is creation of mankind. So if we had not created automobiles, this would not happen. But we can't live with our automobiles anymore. So going back to a world without automobiles is not a possibility. So how do you progress further, right? How do you actually add safety? The answer is basically very simple. So if you look at Tesla, it basically has, on autopilot mode, it has 1 fatality per 320 million miles. Now, what does that mean? So it basically means that the Tesla safety record is basically 3.2 times better on autopilot, and autopilot of Tesla is predominantly artificial intelligence, right? So the autopilot of Tesla, which is AI, is actually 3.2 times safer than humans driving. So if you own a Tesla and you put your Tesla in autopilot mode, you're going to have 3.2 times less chance of being in a fatal car crash, right? And this is the result of AI. It is literally saving lives today with all the Teslas out there. And with more and more automobile companies coming up with autopilot mode in their cars, it's actually a phenomenal achievement in terms of improving safety standards for road transport, right? Now, but what is all this AI, right? We have all this buzz about artificial intelligence, and we all keep hearing AI, machine learning. What is really the difference between AI and machine learning, right? So let's take a quick look at that. Let's get our concepts a bit clear. Let's understand what artificial intelligence really is. Right? So in simple terms, basically, let's define what intelligence is. So if I was to define intelligence, forget the word artificial for a second. If I was to define intelligence, and we say humans are intelligent, then intelligence is predominantly 5 things, which is 5 characteristics that any living being, represents. And these characteristics are, one is the ability to learn, which is I can look at scenarios, I can learn from scenarios, or I can read a book and I can learn. Then I have the ability for perception, which means I can feel my surroundings, I can see my surroundings, I can smell my surroundings, etc. I have the ability to reason. So if I'm taking an action, if I'm taking a walk, or I'm cooking food, I have the ability to reason on why I'm doing a certain thing, right? I also have the ability to problem solve. So when you give me a situation and situation is a very unique situation, I can find unique solutions by doing problem solving, right? I also have the ability to do linguistics, which is I can communicate with peers, with others, etc. Right? So it's not just humans that have this ability, right? You have animals also have this ability. The easiest way to relate these is to pets in your home, right? So whether it's dogs or cats, they all possess this 5 senses. They have the ability to communicate to you as well. They may not be able to talk English, right? But they do talk to you, right? So if you have a pet, you know that they talk to you. They will look at you. They'll create an expression. They'll make a particular type of sound, and you know they're communicating with you. So they also have the ability to do linguistics, but they do everything. They have reasons, they have problems, they have perception, they have learning, right? And this is what intelligence is. Now, if this is intelligence, what is artificial intelligence, right? Now, that's the big question. The answer to this is really, really simple, right? Intelligence that is imparted to otherwise dumb machines that are generally dumb, if you impart intelligence to them, it is called artificial intelligence. So what does it mean? When a machine mimics human behavior, when it mimics something that an intelligent creature would do, you call that system as artificially intelligent. And this is the only definition of AI. And this is the simplest and the only definition of AI which we have, right? So today, almost every industry uses AI, right? Whether it's in medical diagnosis, stock trading, robotic controls, law enforcement, which is a CCTV feeds, automated number plate extraction for ticketing, etc., remote sensing devices, which is satellite remote sensing, all of that, your scientific discovery, toys, even medical research, pharma research, drug discovery research, including your Lego toys, etc., which are like virtual reality or augmented reality toys. They all basically use artificial intelligence, right? Now, what's important to note is Nick Bostrom, who is a very noted philosopher, put out a statement which is very clear, which said, a lot of cutting edge AI has filtered into general applications, often without being called AI, because once something becomes useful enough and common enough, it's not labeled AI anymore. Now, what is an example of something that's so useful and so common that we don't call it AI anymore, right? The answer is automated transmission in your cars. So your automated transmission in cars actually is AI. It is mimicking human intelligence in gear shifting, right? So gear shifting is actually an intelligent activity based on how you're driving. You have to keep your car in the appropriate gear. And an automated transmission does the same thing that a human would do, which is mimicking intelligence. An automated transmission system is actually artificial intelligence. This is not an example. This is not could be or anything. It is AI, right? So an automated transmission is AI. However, in common practice, we don't really call it AI because it's just so common that we don't like to call it AI. We just call it automated transmission, right? Now comes the most important thing of, this dilemma between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Are they the same thing, or are they different things? How are they really related, right? So let's take a look at the difference between these two, right? So artificial intelligence is intelligence exhibited by machines, right? So we're going to go with the definitions first, which is machines doing functions that mimic cognitive functions of the human mind. On the other hand, machine learning is giving computers the ability to learn without explicitly being programmed. What does it mean? You give computers some data, and you say, I want you to learn from this data, which is the ability to learn from data. And the computers figure out a way to learn from the information that's presented to them, which is what we call as machine learning. So the difference between AI and ML is artificial intelligence is machines carrying out tasks that is considered smart. So anything that represents smartness or represents intelligence is what we call AI. Anything where you give data to machines and let them learn for themselves, we call it machine learning. So what does that actually mean? Because the very ability to learn, right, is intelligent. The very fact that you can learn is intelligent. Everything that you do in machine learning is actually 100% subset of artificial intelligence. So everything of ML is part of AI. So whatever you do in AI, it's basically AI actually does a lot of things apart from machine learning, but anything that you do machine learning, or whenever you say machine learning, it's part of artificial intelligence. So we commonly use the word AI and ML, and when you're doing it, it's a common practice to use the word AI and ML. But keep in mind that whenever you do machine learning, you're actually doing artificial intelligence as well, because the very fact that a machine can learn from data that you give it is itself intelligent, and it is not a human giving that intelligence, which is why it is artificial intelligence, right? So where does data science come, right? Now, data science come as a mothership, if I may call it. So you have machine learning, you have artificial intelligence, and then above that, you have data science. So everything that you do in AI and ML is actually a subset of data science. So what all involves, all of this, right? So there are a lot of things in data science apart from AI. What are those, right? Data science involves the practice of cleaning data. It involves the practice of preparing data, denormalizing data, standardizing data is all part of data science. Dashboards that you can create in Tableau, Power BI, interactive charts, real-time charts, all of these are actually part of data science, but they've got nothing to do with artificial intelligence. Simple descriptive analytics, or even taking unstructured data, structuring it, is actually part of data science, which is data preparation effectively, is all part of data science. And artificial intelligence is only a small fraction of data science. So when we say we will learn Python for data science, we will actually learn Python to understand how you can take data, how you can prepare data, how you can work on the data, normalize it, denormalize it, clean it, extract values, etc. We teach all of that. And then after that, we move on to how you can do AI on this data. So for you to do AI or ML, you basically need to have this data structured in one place. And the structuring of the data involves a lot of data science, which is a lot of preparatory work that you must do to get the data in one place and structure it. Once your data is structured and in one place, then you can move on to doing AI and ML. So what do you need, right, to be a data scientist? Right? If you wanted to be a data scientist, and let me tell you that you don't really have to be a data scientist. There are two types of designations in the world, which is a programming data scientist, that is a data scientist that writes code. And then there is a non-programming data scientist, or as we call it, data science managers. So with all of these companies, large enterprises have gone out and have started setting up data science teams. So they're setting up a new team, which is called a data science team. And there was nobody doing data science in these companies. So there were these 5 or 6 individuals that were doing data science. Now, suddenly you have a whole division that does data science. Now, when you have a division, you don't just need programmers, you need managers, you need business analysts, you need delivery managers, customer success managers, you need vice presidents, senior leadership, right? CXO positions, chief data officer, all of that. So irrespective of what age you are at, what experience you have, whether you have 2 years experience, 0 year experience, or you have 15, 20, 25 years experience working in the field, working in any industry, data science is actually a place that you might want to be in, because there are a lot of jobs in anything that you do in the traditional world. Like if you've been working with a manufacturing plant, electronics company, power company, it could be simple management consulting company. All of those jobs, AI will take over, right? AI will start bringing in automation that we have not seen before. And that automation will take over a lot of these jobs, right? But when you want to become a data scientist, what does it really mean, right? It basically means that you can look at, like, even when AI takes all of these jobs, there is the job of making AI, which is still vacant. And there are a lot of vacancies for the positions that actually make AI. And making AI is not just about writing programs. It is also about managing teams that write programs. So even if you're a vice president, you can become vice president of a data science division. You can become delivery manager in a data science division. You can become customer success manager or a business analyst in a data science division. So even if you come from non-programming background, traditional backgrounds, data science field is actually very, very open for you, right? So what does it take to be a data scientist, right? The answer is Python skills, understanding of machine learning, and understanding of domain, which is you need to have the domain knowledge. If I give you data of a manufacturing plant and I say that the reading of water pressure is 420 units, and if you do not understand how to read pascals and etc. or bars and pressure, you don't understand the data. If you don't understand the nomenclature of the data, you can't do data science on this data, right? So domain knowledge is actually important. So when you add Python skills with machine learning understanding, with domain knowledge, you actually become a data scientist. However, the order over here is wrong. This is how most people think that data science is about, right? In a sense, the order is actually reverse. So what you really need first is not Python skills. What you need first is domain knowledge. After domain knowledge comes Python skills. After Python skills comes machine learning understanding. So if you do not have the domain knowledge of the domain for which you're doing data science, there is no way you can do data science. You can be an expert in Python. You can be the best programmer the world has ever seen. I can assure you, you cannot do data science unless you have the domain expertise, right? So domain knowledge comes on top, followed by Python skills, followed by machine learning understanding. Now, my team has told me that most of the people who are attending the session are actually working professionals. So you have at least minimum 3-4 years of experience. Some probably have 20-25 years of experience. So if we have a crowd between, say, 3 to 25 years of experience, I assume all of you have domain knowledge in the domains you're working in. And I'm not referring to information technology. I'm referring to other industries that you're working at, insurance, banking, fintech, right? All of those, including manufacturing, logistics, freight and cargo, right? I assume you're all working in diverse sectors doing various roles. And that knowledge that you have for the domain, right, is what is the most crucial asset that you have. When you add that knowledge with Python skills, and then on top of it, you add machine learning understanding, you can do any type of data science. The Python skills in ML is something you can learn in just 90 days. Domain knowledge, you can't learn in 90 days. So I recommend you stick to the domains you're at, right? So let's get started, with Python, and let's begin a journey, with Python programming. So we'll begin with about Python and what is Python. So Python was, a programming language that was created by the person called Guido van Rossum, and he released the language to the public in the year 1991, right? It's important to know that Python has been here since 1991, right? It is not something that, came in at the moment. So what that means is, let's look at some 5 quick facts of Python, right? And Python was essentially a hobby project. In 1989, which is 2 years before its first release, Rossum was basically, not doing anything during Christmas. He was essentially free during Christmas. So he was thinking about writing a new scripting language that was a descendant of the ABCs and also appeal to Unix/C hackers. And he landed up choosing, Python as a course, Python as a programming language, which could replace ABC and it could be more advanced, than ABC. Now, why is the name so unique, right? So does the name actually come from the Python snake? The answer is no. Rossum was actually a very, very big fan of the British comedy troupe, which is a circus called Monty Python, which was there in the 1970s. So being a big fan of Monty Python or the Monty Python's Flying Circus, he was basically in an irrelevant mood and he just landed up, naming the language as Python, right? Now, Python, basically Tim Peters, who made some of major contributions in the Python community at that time, wrote a poem to explain how Python really works, right? And Python is all about, the syntax. It's all about the, the elegantness, okay, or the eliteness with which you can write code, right? And it's really, really simple. So Python programs, so if you actually import this in any Python environment, and you can try this very soon, right? You will find a poem that says The Zen of Python by Tim Peters. And the poem reads, beautiful is better than ugly. Explicit is better than implicit, which means whatever you write, if it looks beautiful, it is better than it looking ugly. And explicit is better than implicit, meaning rather than having some complex jargons that are very hard to understand, you explicitly mentioning what you want to do is better than having some implicit functions that are really complex for a reader to understand. Then it also goes on to explicitly specifying that simple is better than complex, right? Which means if you have a simple program, it's better than complex program. But if you must have a complex program just because you decided to do some real complicated logic in Python, then complex is better than complicated. So you might get to some programs in Python which are complex, but you would never get to complicated programs in Python, right? Then flat is better than nested. And this is more about how you structure your code, when having code in a uniform flat structure is actually better than going one under the other, which is nested. And sparse is better than dense, which is not having to specify everything, like having functions with partial parameters, etc., is better than it being dense, right? So there's more to the poem, and I'm not going to read out what's more, but it's you can actually basically look at this poem and start reading it, right? When you get a chance. Now, if you're looking for jobs in Python, essentially there are really some really large companies that actually do Python. So whether you look at NASA, Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, IBM, Dropbox, Hike, Walt Disney, Amazon, all of these companies actually extensively use Python for several of their products and services, right? And they basically do this day in and day out. So if you're looking for jobs in these companies and you know Python, it actually opens up a lot of doors for you, right? So Python also, because Python is so popular, right? Yes, Hike is closed. Yes, correct. So because Python is so popular, if you get to the IDLE and type import anti-gravity, right? There's a cartoon or a comic that's actually put out there, which says a person is asking, how are you flying? Like, how are you flying, right? And the person replies, Python, I'm flying because I actually do Python. And you all will notice this. This is not something that is just randomly put up, right? So the anti-gravity module was just put up to represent this comic, which indicates that you can actually fly with Python. So when you do programming in Python as compared to programming in any other languages, you will actually fly doing programming in Python. It is extremely easy to pick up. It's extremely easy to follow, and it's extremely easy to achieve complicated things with really small amounts of code, right? And today is the day when you'll be beginning your journey in Python. So by the end of the next 14 sessions, and this being the first session, you have 13 more after this to go, you will be proficient in Python programming. You will literally be flying with Python programming. And that is my personal promise to you, wherein you will be flying with Python programming. So let's get started. And before that, there's a common misconception that comes about the logo of the Python snakes. Like, do the logo actually represent snakes? Yes, the logo does represent snakes. This is the Mayan representation of snakes that are actually coiled into each other and they're nesting, with each other. The logo does come from Python snakes. However, the language Python is not named after the Python snake. It is named after the Monty Python circus, right? Some of the biggest reasons why you would do Python is Python works on different platforms, whether it's Windows, Mac, Linux, Raspberry Pi, which are embedded devices. It does it. Python has a simple syntax similar to English language, so it's really easy to understand. Python has syntax that allows developers to write programs with fewer lines of code than some other programming languages. So if you come from Java programming, C, C++, C#, Node.js, you will actually notice that Python is really, really concise. It's very, very powerful, right? Python also runs on an interpreter system, meaning that code can be executed as soon as it is written. You don't have to really wait for rebuilds and compiles and all of that, right? This means that prototyping can be very, very quick with Python. And Python can also be treated in a procedural way or an object-oriented way. So you actually get a choice of which way of programming language to use. If you don't understand this, if you don't understand the difference between procedural and object-oriented, that's actually fine. That's more for the computer programming geeks. It's not actually for all the managers like us. I'm personally a founder of the company. I do a lot of coding, but my day-to-day job is not about coding, right? So if you don't understand it, totally fine, don't bother, right? It's time to now spin up your Cloudbooks. And this is the link. I don't expect you to copy it off here. You should have it in your chat. You should have it in the YouTube video description. This is also the same link that you got, as part of your emails this morning. So I hope you've all set up your Blob City account, and we'll be starting with the training. But before that, we have one important thing to do. We announced a lucky draw, and I'm sure all of you are waiting for this. We have 3 Amazon Echo Dots that are out to give out, right? And so we're going to do this right now in 5 minutes right after. So if you're not in the session, so when I announce the lucky draw winner, you have to confirm if you are available in the session. If you're not, we'll wait for like 30 seconds. If you're not able to identify yourself in the session, we will go on to the next person, right, for the lucky draw. So please be active, please be in tune, please be ready to type on the YouTube chat. So if you're present in the session, please actually type on YouTube chat. People are asking, where is the link? The link is in the YouTube video description. Just expand the description, please, like read more, and it should show you the description, right? So first things first, when you open the link, you should see a page like this. This page is your Python basics notebook, and we will be using this notebook for the work that you do, right? And you can actually log in first. So I highly recommend you log into your accounts. I'm going to log into mine with my credentials. You should have your credentials already. If not, you can actually go to cloud.blobcity.com. That's the URL. Go to cloud.blobcity.com and hit login, right? And so I'm going to log into my account. If you don't already have this set up, please kind of make sure you get it set up. So you can see, I can see my name on top right of the screen, which indicates that I'm logged in. I have opened the link that's on the YouTube video. It is also shared with you in the morning. If you've already done the Run Cloudbook button, you don't have to do it again. This is only for people who have not done it before, right? Go to cloud.blobcity.com, right? It's cloud.blobcity.com, and basically, register there if you've not yet registered, right? And okay, so I can actually see a lot of you are marking yourself to be present on the channel. Is this really related to the lucky draw? Because the lucky draw for the Echo Dots actually ended, like you had to post it on LinkedIn, right? Yesterday. So I have a list of all of those of you who are actually present. So let me announce the winner first. After we announce the winner, you have to identify yourself, right? So let's not do mischief. All of you just marking that you're present, right? Okay. So I'm going to hit Run Cloudbook button, which actually creates a Cloudbook for me. So I'm going to name this Cloudbook saying my Python code, and I can name it whatever I like. You can give it a password that you prefer. It can be any password. I'm setting this up as a public notebook at the moment. You can choose public or private. If you go with private, you'll be limited to one free private notebook, else it'll be public, right? And you can use run Cloudbook to actually begin, the Cloudbook. So your Cloudbook should open up in a screen like this, and then I can just hit the power on button, which will basically start the Cloudbook for me, right? So okay, so we're going to wait till it boots up. It can take about 2 minutes at times to boot up the Cloudbook, right? This is actually also a function of how much load is currently on the server, right? And we have something interesting. My team has kind of notified me on the side. They want me to postpone the lucky draw announcement after all of this, interest that all of you are showing. So if you're all fine, we're going to actually announce the lucky draw in the next session, right? And we're going to give you all a chance to post. So if you've not posted on LinkedIn, now is your time to post on LinkedIn. We have a Python program, which is a random number generator Python program, which will basically generate and find out which is the winner for the course. So if you've not done the lucky draw, you can actually do it now. You can go to LinkedIn, post the event, share the Eventbrite link, right? Share it on LinkedIn with the community. Make sure you tag Blob City, which is @BlobCity. And once you've tagged @BlobCity, you will qualify to be part of the lucky draw. So follow us on LinkedIn and tag Blob City. We're going to postpone the announcement of the lucky draw because I see that all of you are like phenomenally interested and flattered by all the interest that all of you are showing. So we're going to give you a little bit more time to go and share the event with others. Mention to the world, announce to the world that you're learning Python here for the first time. You're learning Python with Blob City, and you can go in and ask your colleagues to register. Okay, so there are a lot of questions on the course, etc. So the first thing is, as part of you being a public user on YouTube at the moment, you can go to the Learn section. Inside the Learn section, you can go to the curriculum page. Inside the curriculum page, you will have the option to do start free trial for 3 weeks, which is part of the 3 weeks course. You can actually click this button and it'll enable a trial for you instantaneously, right? So please go ahead and click this button which says start free trial for 3 weeks, right? Okay, and okay, I think we're loaded on the servers because all of you are kind of trying to hit it at the moment, right? And as soon as you enable this, you basically get access to, give it a few moments. It's fine. If it's loaded right now, give it a few moments. That's fine. It'll work, right? We're probably having capacity issues with too many people hitting it. So right after this, you can basically access the course, right? And you can cover all of the modules all the way till Seaborn, which is data visualization, all of them completely free as part of being into the 90 Days to Data Scientist program, right? So this is fine. So what we're going to do is we can actually begin a journey in Python. So I have Suvir also with me, who will be taking the training on Python. If you do not have, if you do not have the Cloudbook running yet, that's fine. That's why we had asked all of you to actually start it in the morning itself and keep. If you don't have it running yet, that's fine. Let's begin the journey, follow the trainer, follow Suvir in the training, right? And we will get back to you using the Cloudbooks, by the time when it's lunchtime, you can actually set up, the Cloudbooks, right? It's possible that we're going to have an issue due to a lot of people actually spinning up Cloudbooks in a very short time frame, right? So don't be alarmed. It will work for you. We just need to give the servers time to kind of ramp themselves up, right? So let's begin our journey with data science. And I'm going to hand it over to Suvir. So you can see that my Cloudbook is actually powered on. It took a while, but it is powered on. And I'm going to click the open button right after that. And when I open it, it'll present my Jupyter screen, and I can log in with my password that I set up. Once I am in this interface, I can open the first program, which is Hello World in Python, right? And you can see that I have the code here. This is ready. So this is work for me. I did it right in front of you, right? And you can basically go and do the same thing in the Cloudbook that you have, right? And perfect. And you can activate the free trial for 3 weeks. So the free trial basically gives you access to the first 14 lectures. There are total 40 lectures in the course. It gets you access to the first 14 lectures completely free of cost. That's everything of Python completely free of cost. After that, if you would like to continue onto the training beyond the free period, you can actually go on by enrolling for the course at $9.99. We have offers, etc., that we occasionally run. So please wait to see towards the end of the session. We might actually give you an offer. We've not decided. My team is not yet confirmed whether they want to give out the offer or not. So it's $1,000, or in Indian currency, it is 74,999 rupees. That's inclusive of GST, all included. That is what we cover. The course actually involves a significant number of modules, which is everything so we start with Keynote, we start with Python Basics, Python Basic 3, which is 6 sessions on Python. Then there's SQL, How Machines Learn. This is where we begin our journey in machine learning. Then we go to NumPy, we go to Pandas, we go to Matplotlib, Seaborn, etc. The free sessions stop at Seaborn. After that, it continues on to machine learning concepts, exploratory data analysis, a bird's eye view of ML, which is all of your regression, analysis, your decision trees, random forest, neural network, how it works, all of that is covered. Then we have dedicated modules on regression analysis, decision trees, support vector machines, clustering algorithms, naive Bayes, ensemble methods, gradient boosting, neural networks. We cover TensorFlow, deep learning, reinforcement learning, natural language processing, right? OpenCV, the cloud, thinking like a data scientist, Power BI. We cover everything in R programming, including machine learning in R programming, your R dashboards, which is your basic plots, Shiny dashboards, all of that is also covered. And data science for real is also covered, right? So if you're having issues reading the font, please go ahead and put it to 720p. Mayank, thank you very much for commenting that. Please put your YouTube video on 720p, which will give you half HD resolution. The screen will be very clear. Can we use Anaconda for doing this course? Yes, you can use Anaconda for the course. We highly recommend you use Blob City Cloud, right? Because the trainer will be using a Blob City Cloudbook. So if you follow the trainer along, it's going to be really easy for you to do it on the Cloudbook. If you do Anaconda, if you're comfortable with Anaconda, go ahead and do Anaconda, right? So that is it for now, and let's begin our session on begin your journey in Python. It's time we really get started and begin to roll in getting you set up on Python. So I'm going to welcome Suvir into the session. Suvir, are you ready to start?
Hello, Sanket. Yes, absolutely.
Hi, Suvir. Yeah, perfect. So, all of you, Suvir is actually an exceptionally good trainer. He's been training with us for several years now. He's a founder himself. He's a practicing data scientist himself. He's an expert in this field with more than 10 years of experience, and he's done several data science projects, right? So there's no one better than Suvir that I can think of to teach you Python programming, and beginning your journey in data science. So let's get started. For all of you, if you're not able to spin up your Cloudbooks, give it a while. It will start. It will take some time because there are like 600 plus people requesting it at the moment, right? So it can take a while for us. So please be patient. The Cloudbook will open. while Suvir is training, focus on the training. You can always spin up the Cloudbook after the training, right? Over to you, Suvir, to take over and begin their Python journey.
Sure. Thanks, Sanket, for that introduction. And I'll go ahead and share my screen with everyone so that we're able to see. But firstly, I hope you all are able to hear my voice. I welcome you all into this session, and it was a great introduction by Sanket for this part. And yes, indeed, we are going to cover a lot about Python from practical standpoint of view. And so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen, and if you can just let me know if you were able to hear my voice clearly, and also if you can see the screen.
Voice is clear, Suvir. We're not able to see the screen yet.
Okay, so I've shared the screen, so I hope you're able to hear me and also see the screen.
Yes, we can see it now.
Sure, thanks. So this is the Blob City interface. Sanket just walked us through to this portal. I'm going to put in my login credentials. I hope everyone is able to log in into this part. I'm already registered to this portal. If not, you can register and you can log in into this part. So let me quickly log in and share with you what we have, the agenda and the curriculum which we're going to look upon. Okay. Okay, so coming onto the screen, so for people, we have already been shared the Cloudbook, the resources which we are going to work upon today on these lessons. And I have already imported this notebook into my portal, that is my login into the Blob City Cloud AI, and that's something basically here. So I have already imported. So this link is already shared with people in the chat box. So you can click on that link and can have it on your portal. I'm going to simply power on this one so that we may get the access to all the lessons and the curriculum, what we're going to look at in just a moment, and also moving forward. So again, so the system is starting. I hope everyone is also in the same spirit and with same motivation level. This is the first class. I'm sure everyone is well motivated and quite data enthusiast. What we need for data science and machine learning is to just be a data enthusiast in that part. We should be able to understand the fundamental concepts. I have given some password to this notebook, and while you do, when you are importing this notebook, this portal will also ask you to specify a password. try to be a simplistic password as far as possible, and try to maintain those passwords along with your um, notebooks which you'll be creating. I have just done a little zoom part out here. Okay, so what is data science? I hope everyone is very sure about this. Thanks for that. I could successfully log in. Thanks for that link. So I hope everyone is able to see the screen. Talking about Python, talking about data science, machine learning, I'm equally excited about this part to share with you some part of data science, some part of machine learning, and also the components which we use into building up of successful machine learning applications. Our machine learning application should be in line with the domain, what Sanket spoke about some time ago, because if the system is adding value to a business process, then only it is accepted across the business verticals, correct? So need to ensure that you have the required domain, could be in the marketing aspects, could be in the customer personalized information management, could be content management, could be in the telecom, could be in the banking or any other related domain. So I have worked mainly on supply chain, on the logistic part, and also on the just-in-time deliveries. I have also worked on e-commerce and retail. So typically we are working currently to solve much of our e-commerce problems in terms of logistics, what we have. So we're trying to look at those problem statements into our AI and machine learning technologies, and we are trying to derive value as far as possible. And this is what would be expected from you. So once you are trained on this particular subject, technically, functionally is something that you will need to map it to your business domain. And I'm sure that, once we have a club solution, we are able to give a larger value to the community over there. So keeping that spirit in mind, and I hope everyone is also, they have the same kind of a spirit, and everyone here is looking at this Python course for the first time. So we will keep this thing very simplistic, very straightforward, and also we are open for questions. So in case if you have any questions during the session, you can very well raise your hand and you can go ahead with that. I'll try to answer those questions as far as possible. So we have some computer systems with us, we have some algorithms with us, we have some technicals with us, we have the technology. But what we don't have is the data, let's say. So these technologies basically would not make any sense if we are not feeding that with some kind of an information or some kind of a data over there. And that's why we first require data to do any kind of an analysis. The lessons out here, which we see on the screen, are just an example to use those data and create something reasonably good, which is logical enough to fit into a business process. That could be, automating a repeated process, maybe picking up files from some specific location and dumping those files for any other target location. Need to open the file, make some changes, and then dump the file into some specific locations. These are all programming conventions which we basically follow while doing these stuffs, right? So we make programs to make business processes seamlessly comfortable and smooth over there. So in your case also, when we build machine learning applications, it should be so seamless that it is very well tied with the user experience which we have. I mean, the user would definitely think that of that as a convenience, but definitely there's a lot of machine learning components which are adding value to these applications. So as Sanket said, yes, I come from almost 12 years experience. My name is Suvir Bhatia. I am a technical data science instructor. Plus, I also work on customer-centric projects. We deliver quite a good amount of value-based solutions to our customers, who in turn, give us an opportunity to explore the kind of a subject which they have. So as just as a heads up for everyone, as you know, that machine learning, artificial intelligence, these are some real new components which have started to come here in this market. And everyone is quite overwhelmed with that. They think it's some kind of a magic that will happen, that will turn around the scene in just some time, but that's not really the case. This requires a stringent amount of domain knowledge. This requires a stringent amount of technical practices, and not just few months of practice. It would require years of practice just to master that thing. And just to be a data scientist, you have to actually master the subject. So we should know what kind of an algorithms we should be using, which is actually a straightforward thing. But the most essential skill that you would need is the reasoning to data. So if the data is given to an individual, that could be a few thousands of records in the data set, just say let's say in Excel. So what kind of questions as a human intelligence you can ask from that particular Excel workbook? You could ask about the kind of a count of customers we have in that Excel sheet, if it is a customer related data, the kind of a sales amount we have, if it is a transaction level of data, or any kind of a regional information that is available in that particular file with us. So that is basically the reasoning, that how you quantify your questions in a logical way, so that you're able to derive answers from those particular data. And that's what the information is. Information is not an Excel file. Information is the questions or the query which you have fired against those data to get the information. And where do we use the intelligence? We take the intelligence a bit forward, which is machine learning. So using Excel, you can definitely do descriptive analytics. Like you can summarize the data, you can pivot the data, you can sort the data, you can transform the data to some level. For people who have listening these terminologies for the first time, we'll definitely try to cover that up in the sessions. And I'll try to be as simple as possible. I always like to be very simple and straightforward. And the sessions are also very simple and straightforward. So I hope we all will like this session, and I hope the session comes up with you in a very productive way. So the first link which I click is going to be the Hello World program. I might scribble a bit of things in this notebook, so you can just look at it for the first time when you're looking at this part. And I can encourage you to practice at your own pace after the sessions. You have the login for the Cloud AI. You can log in anytime. You can continue with your notebook with more of a practice than what we did in the sessions. Okay, that's great, perfect. So I am actually, I'm really happy to take this lecture about Python. For people, those who are worrying about other programming language, we will come to that part also, that how different Python is from other programming language and why Python. So as we learned sometime back in the class, that the technicals is very much required, because if you want anything, there has to be a medium, a transferable medium, correct? So if you want to bring your thoughts into action, that's where you require a programming. So as you know, Python is no different than any other programming language, but I would like to highlight one point here of Python is Python for data science. The interpreter which we are using is actually a scripting language, correct? There's another flavor of Python called as an object-oriented. So that part is something which we are not looking at right now, because for data science, this is what the scripting language is what we look for. And what is the difference between these two languages? The scripting language which we're looking at the screen right now actually runs line by line, just to make it simple for now. So I have one block of code. I can run this first, and then I can go to my second block of code, and I can run that after the first one. So I can actually do a sequential code running line by line using my Jupyter, and I can write Python codes in that. But why to do this? Because most of you who are attending this class must have seen other programmers actually writing maybe hundreds of lines of code and then executing the program. That is correct. But in data science and analytics, you would like to get the information from the data as soon as you write the code. So if I'm reading a data, so if I'm writing, let's say, if I'm this hello world statement on the screen. So this is the interface for the Jupyter. For people, those who are new to the Jupyter notebook, this is actually a notebook to write your technicals in Python, and you can run the program in this notebook, and you can actually get the output result set in the same notebook. We have other options, like you can also download this notebook as one of these formats, just as for your references. So you can share with your colleagues or any peers. You can actually export this as a PDF and you can share it with your learners. You can also make a copy. You can save it as a new. You can also save a checkpoint, and there's a different things that you can do. In the edit part, also you have some kind of an merging of cells. You can cut, copy cells. Cells is nothing but the block of code which we write. There are some viewing options and some insert options which we're going to use a lot as we move on with the training. So we can insert a cell above and below, and we can do those kind of things over on this part. Cell will help us to actually go to the cell level. So in case if I want to do anything on this cell level, I will do. So as we move on, you will see me working on these options. So I'm sure that you'll also collect some information from that. Just another thing is this Hello World program is created with some inputs. So you can see there's an IN which is coming with a green sign. So that means this is actually an input. So as everyone know that in software programming, you need inputs and outputs. And what we are interested in actually both, not just output, because we just can't do any kind of an input. The input has to be very reasonable and very logical. Based on our inputs, the code is going to give us an output. So this is the input line. And when we run this, there's going to be the subsequent output block over there. And we're going to see that in just a moment. When a particular block of code, so this is a block of code, when this block of code is actually running, there's going to be a star sign which will appear just adjacent to this block, which is in this bracket, which you can see here. And if it's in the star mode, that means the block is still running. You have to wait, and once it finishes, it actually gives that as an index number, that what is the count of times it has run in the entire notebook. So I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So let's say every programming language course starts with a Hello World program, and we will do the same. So that's actually correct. So whether you see in C or C, C++ or Java programs, if you have seen that in the past, you have seen that the Hello World is actually the program. The program is actually talking to the world that, okay, I am here, and now I'm wishing you a hello world to everyone. Now you can use my scripting language, and you can give me inputs so that I can give you some outputs. So that's about the print hello world. But there are some things which is going inside this part. So there is some kind of a statement which we have written. There is some kind of a print statement which we have. We have some kind of a brackets which we are using on this part. Now, when you actually design, when you write software code, you need to follow some kind of a grammar which we have for that. So, and Python is no different. So we have some lexicals and some semantics for this language, and that's what we're going to follow. So the first thing is print hello world, and you will see the hello world is actually in the quotes. I'll come to that in just a moment. But let's say if I want to run this particular block of code. So what I can do is I can actually click on this one cell. You can see this. Or I can use a keyboard shortcut, which I will be more interested in, which is like using a shift enter. So shift enter is something which you can use on your keyboard to run this block of line. And you can see that the empty space which we had within those brackets have now actually appeared there as an index. So it says that this is the line number 1, which you have already run onto this part. So this is the line which we have already run in this part. So you have the index, that's index number 1. So we can say, yes, this is the first line of code which we have run successfully. And the Jupyter Notebook has given that as an index of 1. But how about this print? I mean, this print, is the print is a function? What is this? Yes, print is actually a function in Python. So as you know, that programming languages are built up with a combination of various functions. So definitely print is a function in Python which we have written. So what will happen if I write print? So you can see simply if I write print, it's going to give me more or less some area where I can write something. So I can say this is my first Python class. Okay. Now, if you see, I have just changed this sentence a bit. Instead of hello world, I'm also writing this is my first Python class. If I want, I can also use print statements to combine both the statements. I can use hello world. This is my first Python class. I can also use it that way. But print statements are generally used when you would want to print something on the screen. The best example I can give you for a print statement is, you know, the flight arrivals and the departures. When you go to the airport, you can see a lot of screens which shows you the departures and the arrival times for a flight, right? Or even the boarding time or the baggage check-in and check-out timings which you see on the screen is all handled using the print statements. So those screens are just used for printing whatever information they're getting from the backend. As such, those screens are not computers. They are simply they are display devices and simply working on the print statements which they are getting from the backend. So that's how they're able to customize these statements which they write, which comes from the backend. You can combine 1 or 2 or 3 different, different words or sentences which we have into a single statement. But why this printing? I mean, why should we print this statement? See, when we work on different objects in Python, so one thing in Python is that every object, um, every data which you create is, any item in Python is actually an object. So whether you create a line of code, you create a variable, you create a function, everything is an object. So when you want to print objects, which you compute in the backend, could be the probability of something, could be the probability of people attending the session. It could be the predicted temperature. It could be a recommended book by the system. All those things, whenever you would like to print it on the screen, you would just use the print statements. So Python works with a lot of functions internally. It works with a lot of user-defined functions. It has got its own functions. So we will try to understand those functions totally, and with the help of some basic examples. So if you see in the second line, so we have some kind of a green statements which are appearing on the screen, and there are some kind of a colored objects which we can see on the screen. So you can see that we have this my number appearing as black, and then we have this purple equation sign, and then we have this integer, that is number 10, as an integer value with this particular variable. Okay, yes, so what are we doing out here? First is we are trying to learn what is a comment in Python. So it could be this way, that you have written several different text out here. So this is my first program, and I will say I would like to write my second program is also something which I would like to write, my second program. And you would say that in this situation, I don't want this thing particular to be printed. I don't want this thing to be printed. So I've just used a hash key on the keyboard, and the hash key is going to comment that particular line of code. And if I run this again, you can see the statements have not changed. Now only the last 2 print statements are going to print for me, because the first 2 print statements, I have commented that using the hash sign on the keyboard. And that's what happens. So any line starting with a hash is a comment in Python. And we would like to use the hash sign than the 2 forward slashes which we have in the program or on the screen. There's a requirement that okay, so for people with the screen which is a bit smaller, I have just zoomed in the screen, so I hope this comes out to be a bit better for the visuals for everyone. Let me further zoom that up, so I think that would be more comfortable to everyone. I think this should be better. So I have zoomed the screen, so I hope this is a little better and you're able to see the statements very well. So what we were saying is any line starting with the hash key is actually a comment in Python. And we are going to use this a lot. So if you're using a print statement or if you're creating a function, you can see that we will be using this hash key a lot. So let's say we are creating a first variable called as my number, and this is just a name. Just as an example, I would like to share, like before I was into this programming, before I could even program or code, I used to wonder how computer understands your different naming conventions. So let's say, how does computer understand that the regions which are likely to be affected by the drought, or let's say the regions which are likely to be affected by the flooding, or so how does computer know the region names? I mean, I used to wonder why these qualitative informations, how the computer is able to do that. That's because we create that manually in the system. I never knew that simple stuff. But let's say this is my number. I can actually rename this to any other number or any other kind of a name. I can also name it as integer number or your number or something like that. So it purely depends. These naming conventions are purely dependent on the developer's choice or kind of a convenience. So if you've been received a statement by a manager that, okay, you are supposed to follow the standardizations in your coding, then you would say that if you're creating an integer variable, then you need to prefix or suffix that with an int or something like that. These are like standardizations, which basically most of the projects have to follow. That is called as a code standardizations. Because if like 10 people are writing the program, and then it becomes really difficult to manage all those variables. So my number is equal to 10. That means we have some kind of a value which is going into this number, and the kind of a value which we have, this is a integer value, correct? And that's what we have. This is an integer value. We can change the integer value to something else. We can make it to 15 or 20 or 30 or something like that. So the above line of code defines a variable called as my number, and it assigns it a value of number 10. Okay, and as I said, that we can definitely assign any kind of a value to this, but even by specifying those values, we have different kind of data types to that, right? So let me give you some small example on the data types, as you already know, but this would be like a revision for everyone. For people, those who are already coming from the Microsoft Excel background would already know this. But yes, it's always good to have a revision of this because we are learning Python. People, those who are coming from an engineering background and looking at this for the first time, even for them, it will be kind of a revision. For people, those who are coming from a non-technical background, in some or the other, your career professional moves, you must have learned this during your entrance exam, preparation exams or something like that. So overall, I believe these are some basics, and we are going to look at this part from Python perspective. So the first thing is like what kind of a data types we deal with, and the second thing is what kind of a data structures we deal with. Okay, there is a difference between the data types and data structures. So data types and data structures. So the data types are going to be, as you all know, what kind of data types we have. We have string data types, we have numbers, okay, we have floats, correct? Or we can get into the numbers part also itself. So we have complex numbers, or we have Boolean, so which is like a true or a false, correct? I'm sure that everyone is with me on this part. And the last but not the least, we can say that it is the date. I hope everyone is with me on this part. So we have string data types, we have numbers, we have decimals, we have complex numbers, we have Boolean, we have date. So everyone knows the example for this. So the string example is the same as what we saw in the print statement above, that this is my first Python program, or maybe in a hello world program. Numbers could be many types, real numbers, whole numbers, integers. But in Python, we are treating them as two numbers and floats. That is integers and floats. I should actually change this to number integers. This is floats, complex, Boolean, and date. Everyone knows this. Data structures is actually a part of data, the way you store the data, in the fashion you store the data. Okay, so if you want to have the data structures, so we can store the data in the form of lists. So you can have kind of a list that you would want to have. You can store that in a form of a tuple, or in fact, in a more generic language, I should call this as a vector. Now, guys, as you know that for data science, there are a couple of requirements. That the first thing is that you have to be a data enthusiast. And a bit of statistics. So people, those who are kind of interested into pursue that math and the stats relative to data science, definitely that will enhance the learning experience from the user perspective. Other than for people those who really worry about the math and the stats, so just as a reliever, I would like to say that you don't have to use the complete math or stat which we have been learning. Only some part of that which is required, like some part of calculus or some kind of a algebra which we need to do, some kind of a logarithms. Those things like simple stuff, probabilities, number systems. These are the things that you need to be familiar with. Other than that, I think all is quite understood by everyone. So these are the data structures that we are storing the data in a specific format. The other data structures could be the tabular data structure, which we call that as a data frame, isn't it? Everyone is with me? I hope everyone is with me on this part. Now, just since we are using about data frame, so there's one requirement for creating charts. Everyone knows that if you want to create visuals out of your data, the first requirement from the data is to bring the data in a tabular fashion, correct? Because if you don't bring your data in a tabular way, you cannot plot it. See, Python way it's different. So because we are using different libraries in Python, so we can also use tuples or lists basically to assign access values to a chart. That's a different thing. But in a very generic way, even in Excel or any other visualization tools which we have for business analytics, you need the data in a tabular fashion. And there's one tool also which is actually based on the tabular name that's called as Tableau. So as you know that Tableau more or less does the same thing. It first gets your data in a table format, and then you can start plotting your visuals or charts in that. All right, so these are some basics that I'm sure that everyone will know. So here in my number, we are using an integer value. We can very well use any other value that's called as a type independent. So Python is type independent language. All right, so and when we create the value, when we create this variable with a value of 10, we simply would like to print that. And when I run that, it's simply going to print that for me. I'm going to say print my number, and it's going to say print of my number is 10. So I had to run this code, this line of code before, because this variable was unknown to Python, so it actually didn't recognize. So I have to run this line of code first, which I did. And after that, I can run print my number, and that's what you have it here. There's one thing that you will have to keep in mind is when you turn off this notebook, let's say you have finished practicing your notebook, and you would like to log off from the system, the variables which you have created will not be there for you if you have actually closed this notebook. If you keep this notebook open, no problem, you can still utilize those variables. But if you close or if you log off from the system, you won't be able to use them again. You will have to run the Jupyter notebook from the start in order to populate those variables again. I hope I'm being very clear on this part. So if you are practicing, so these are some things that can actually bring you to a halt, which shouldn't be happening. So just ensure that you try to finish your practicing session within one session itself. But what happens? So what we did is print of my number, and it gave us the integer value which we had in that variable. But there is a shortcut. We can use for printing, and just the variable name in a single line instructs Python to print the variable value. So we don't actually need the print statement, do we? And if I try to run this, you can see it has the value, correct? And in this part, I would also like to generate some interest in people. How does this thing work? So what is the difference between writing a print statement and actually using the my number? So the print my number and just my number will both get the same results. So any idea that if it gets the same results, then why you should be using the print statements? Correct? Why you should be using a print statement in these scenarios? When I'm using print of my number and when I'm using simply my number, it gives me the same results. See, technically there are a couple of I'm going to tell you two things in this part. First is you can observe the output in this case. So in line number 6, which we have, when we actually use the print statement, it didn't give us any kind of an out kind of a label out here, correct? It simply gave us number 10, which was the value of that variable. But in the line number 7, we can see that we've got a kind of a label here, which talks about it being out. So what does this say? In fact, to a technical person like me, it says that this record which you see, the 10th record which you see on this block of line, is simply printed on the screen, and it has not occupied any memory location in your computer. But this out number 7, this value number 10, when we got this out, it says, the Jupyter says that this value, that is value number 10, is occupying some memory location on your computer. So there's one thing very clear from this part, that we are using print statements just to print the information on the screen, and we are not very much interested to store that further in the memory. And second is that we are using print statements to customize what we would like to print and not simply display the variable values. So I can say that print my number. So I can say the value of my number is, okay, and this is one of my printing, and I would simply close this using a single quote, and I would just give that a comma. You can see that I'm actually customized this. So the value of my number is my number, which is a variable. So which I can't do in this case in line number 7. You can very well relate the differences of writing the print and not writing the print. So it all depends on what you want to achieve. So you'd want to store that value in a memory. So just go ahead with using the number. Some kind of an help statement also we get in this part. What kind of a so there's a So guys, you can free to put some questions on the questions panel. I can view that periodically as we move. Okay, so now when we proceed further in this session, we would also like to get some help first in this session. Okay, so help is like every programming tool gives you some kind of an help options that we can use. So my number, we would want some help on this object, let's say. So I would not call this my number as a variable my number. I will call that as some object for me, let's say. So my number is actually an object for me. And what I want to do with this object is I would like to know what kind of object this particular my number is. Okay, so I'm going to say my number question mark and run the shift enter key for any block of code which you want to write. You will always do shift enter. Okay, so when you do the shift enter, it says that this variable which we have is actually a type integer, and it has a string form of 10 and it has some dot string. So that's fine. I'll explain you what dot string is a bit later in the sessions. But it gives us some information about this object, and the object information is int, and the value for this particular object is 10. There's another way that you can do it. I can say you give me the type of this object. I would say print type of my number. If you have already populated your variables in your workspace, so you can very well get them as an IntelliSense using your tab key. So, so if I simply say my and I say using the tab key, you can see that it automatically populates the variable name which I have for that. So if you have a lot of my number 1, 2, 3, 4, you can use a tab key and can choose which variable you're talking about for the print statement. So for now, we can also achieve it this way. I will comment this so that the window doesn't open up. And when I say print the type of my number, it says it's a class of integer. This is just as what we saw in the help statement. Okay, so we can comment this and we can enable the help again. And does this help work only when we put the question mark after the object? No, it also works when we prefix this in the object. Even a suffix would work. So in both the cases, whether you apply that as a prefix or as a suffix, the help is going to work for you using the question symbol over there. There's a couple of things I would like to tell people that Python is extremely case sensitive language. So if you're writing as this my number in such a fashion, and if you try to kind of execute or run this particular kind of part of code, it's going to say that, let's say, if I say print of my number, if I try to run this part, we are assuming that this is going to be our variable. This is the help, so I can just close it. See, it says that also does the same thing, and my number is not defined in this case. So Python is extremely case sensitive. So the lowercase a is completely different than an uppercase a. Okay, so please keep this in mind for all the beginners, that when you create variables, so you have to ensure that all those variables are actually in tandem. All right. So let's say if this is an error in the block of code and I would like to clear this error and I would like to give any error over there. Okay. So this is the syntax error because my number is not defined. And in case if I want to clear this error, I would say go to the current outputs and I would simply say clear. There is no shortcut key to clearing this. This is a little hard part that you will have to do, that every time you will have to go to this cell and go to the cell type or go to the current output and then say clear. So when I do this, it's going to clear that part off for us. Okay, so you can see that how simply we are doing it. I mean, if you try to understand it from the logical perspective, it's absolutely perfect. Okay, so the only thing is you're going to get an error when we are not logically writing the program. Definitely, the program has learned more than what we know. So definitely, the program is going to give an error, and we have to strictly follow and adhere to those errors in order to rectify those statements. So now how about defining our first string type variable? So this is a string type variable, and the type for this is going to be a string. A string literal, and also there's if you try to look at the documentation for this part, you will see that we can also define string to what length of the character that we can define. We can have the 8-bit or 16-bit string over there. Even goes for the integer part. We can go with an int 8 or int 16. Typically, we prefer int 16 because int 16 is likely to take less memory space compared to int 64. So my string is equal to hello world, and let's say we're going to create this one. And this variable is created. And this is one thing to notice, that when you try to load the variable with some value, nothing happens except the line of code is executed, or the line of code is running for us. So simply this line of code simply ran for us, and it seemed like it didn't do anything for us, but actually it load this hello world into the my string variable. So when I print it, we can have the output. So again, you can see using the print statements, we don't have any block as an out, which says over there, because it actually didn't use any memory location. And my string hello world got printed because we have the out over here. So let's check the type of this variable. Again, the same things that we want to explore. We would like to explore this my string variable. So I'm going to say that you run this part and give me the type of this variable. There's one thing I would like to also highlight to all the beginners. First thing which I highlighted is that Python is a case sensitive language, correct? Um, and after being a case sensitive, that means your uppercase A is different than lowercase a. There's one more thing, that in this variable, the variables are always type independent. In fact, the variables which we create in Python are always type independent. So let me just go here, insert and cell below. I would say in Python are always type independent. What does this mean? So if I'm defining a variable, let's say my integer, okay, this is my variable called as my int, and I give that as a name, a value of 10. So it does run for me, correct? It does work for me. So there's some indentation error. Okay. So it does work for me. So that means my int is equal to 10. It is working for me. So I'm going to say print my int, which is like, you can see now I'm using the IntelliSense. So it's giving me all the available variables starting with my in my workspace out here. And I'm going to say you print my int for now. And it just prints this for us. I also want it to print the type of my int for us. So just type the print the type of this object. So I have a class of integer. So that means I know that it is a class of integer. So it can have any value from 10 to 20 to any kind of an integer. Basically, we can even have negative numbers, negative integers in that case. Let's change this value. I will change my integer to something else, but the name would still remain the same. Let's say I'm going to say mine, just because I want to demonstrate that variables in Python are type independent. So my integer is equal to my name, let's say. Okay, my name is something, let's say my name, and it is my name. So I will replace this with that. I would say you print my int, and you print the type of my int. Same things, no different. The only thing is that this is actually an int variable. And here I have changed this to a string variable or string literally. You can say, so this is a string variable, that's an integer variable. And when I print this, you can see the earlier representation which we had. Sorry about that, there's a mistyping from my side. This is print is there's an extra R which has come up. So I'll rerun this part. And you can see the initial part which we had run was a class of integer. And later on, it has transformed or changed itself to a class of string. So what does that mean? It means that variables in Python are always type independent. Variables are not saying. So the shortcut key, there's a question. So the shortcut key to run the program is Shift Enter on your keyboard. You can use the Shift and the Enter key to actually do that. So now we can see that there's a distinction. And firstly, Python has not given us any errors, unlike just like what we do in SQL. When you create a table in SQL for people, those who have worked on database systems, you can see that you have to define the data type for every field. That's called as metadata management, correct? And in that metadata, you define that, okay, my first class ID is going to be an integer, my second column is going to be some other data type, etc. There are many shortcuts which we can use, but the shortcut which currently I'm using or most of the people use is going to be the Shift Enter. You can try with the Control Enter also, but Shift Enter is something which I'm using currently. There's one text which is written here. So you will see that the type of my number which we created earlier was actually a type of integer. And then later on my string, so which was never set the type of the variable. So as I said before, that we didn't actually explicitly tell my integer to be a string variable. We simply replaced the content for that variable with a string value over there. Correct? So that's what we want to say, that unlike some of the languages like SQL, which I mentioned, or even C for that matter, Python does not require you to set the type of the variable. It will auto-infer the type from the value that is set to that variable, which is actually very good. Okay, so we also did something interesting. So we used a first multi-line comment. Okay, there are some commenting which we are using for multi-line comments. So let's read this part and try to understand what these multi-line comments are. Because so far we have simply understood that we can comment a specific statement or an expression in Python. What are expressions, guys? Anyone who is familiar with the data part? We have data types, we have data structures, we have data expressions. So could anyone tell what data expressions are likely to be? You can put that in your comment box, chat box. I can read it through that. So you can definitely let me know what is your understanding is about expressions. When it specifically comes to data expressions, I'll be very specific in that part. Okay, so we actually did a multi-line comment, and the answer is actually no. So, but we saw something like this. Is followed by many Python developers. You can also write your comments something like this. This is actually for the doc string. So if you are creating your variable or a function, so let's say if you're creating your function, I'll give you an example for this one. So let's say you're using a function called as print function, and I do a question mark on this print function and run this part. Can you see that there's a doc string which has come as an help for this print function? So the doc string says that this is a print function and it has got some value and it has some system out over there. And can you see all this text prints the value to a stream or by default option? This is all called as the doc strings. And if you are creating a function, which we will do moving forward, when we create our own functions, we can specify that what that function is likely to do. So let's say if you have created a function to to calculate the Pythagoras theorem, or maybe the shortest path for the traveling salesman problem, if everyone knows that. So when you try to write those programs, when you write the functions, if someone else is kind of referring to your function, would you not give some kind of a help on that? Like some kind of reading what that function is doing or is likely to do? So that is what we're going to say. The doc strings are the help for the functions which we are writing. Okay. You can see that we have this doc string. So let's see how to do that. So let's see how to set a variable to a multi-line string. So let's say my string, and there's no actually, I've not written any value to that. And simply I'm saying that, okay, my string, and this is a multi-line hello world. And when we actually try to run this, you can see this is a multi-line hello world. It is simply giving us the doc string which we have written for this particular object. So can I say my string, can you see this? I can also get you some examples. So you can see. We have some doc class. So when we create a function, definitely we'll be able to see this, but you can see that there's some kind of a methods we have moving forward. So we have class, we have doc, there's a doc string which actually comes up, which I will show that to you moving forward in the functions, which they are more relevant over there in functions. You can see that the moment I run the print strings is going to give me the documentation for that particular object, that this object is likely to be this particular part. You can also mention your help text over there. Now coming to the expressions which we spoke about. So there are a couple of comments which I've received. In fact, a couple of people have written like, you know, expressions are a combination of variables, values, and operators. I mean, I think this is one of the finest definitions I have seen, and this is answered by Gaurang Panchani. So that's a great thing, Gaurang. Even Pranay date, like in programming, like C is equal to A plus B, and absolutely the Gajal Lakshmi Anil Kumar has also given the correct answer for that. So yes, so what are the answers that we've got? So people are saying, so let me go to the cell and insert cell below. People are saying C is equal to A plus B. It's an expression. I totally agree with that. People say A is equal to 8 plus, sorry for typing this, 9 into 9, right? And some kind of another number, let's say. So this is also an expression which is correct. So let's say A is equal to A square plus B square, correct? So we can say this is also an expression. This is also an expression. Anything that computes, which is a combination, as the person said, the gentleman spoke about, that yes, it's a combination of operators, it's a combination of variables, it's a combination of totally, it becomes, so this forms an expression. And what kind of an expression? It's a mathematical expression. Similarly, we can have string expressions also. What is a string expression? Let's say string 1. This is my string 1, and this is my string 2. Let's say these are expressions. These are my string expressions. So I can do this. So these are my string expressions. But when we talk from machine learning perspective is going to give us all about calculating expressions for specific outputs. Because as you know that machine learning is all about algebra. It's all about linear equations, equations and linear inequations, and also linear equations in 1, 2, or maybe 3 variables, and also linear inequations in 1, 2, or 3 or more variables for that matter. Absolutely perfect. And there's one more thing which I would like to speak is when you compute these expressions, okay, when you compute these expressions are likely to give you a scalar value. I hope everyone understands what is a scalar value. Is simply a single value. So when you are saying that a is equal to 2 plus 2, so what is going to be the value for a? Absolutely, it's going to be a scalar value, which is 4 in this case. I'm not running it because if I run it, then I will have to comment these things. If you want to comment more than one line in Jupyter, there's an option, there's a shortcut. You can use a control and forward slash. So that will actually do a multi-line comment in Jupyter Notebook. If you want to revoke that comment, again, control forward slash, it's going to revoke that thing for us. But definitely, I'm going to comment this for now. I'm going to run this. So print of string 1, string 2 is going to give me string expressions, which it has already calculated. And a is equal to 2 plus 2. Print of a, you can see that it's giving us a scalar value of 4. Let's scroll down a bit, and there is some exercise for us. I'm sure I like to look at the exercises always, definitely, because that really helps us move forward. Okay. There's a question. Okay, there's a question. Explain the doc string. The doc string is all about documentation string, because you're not writing numbers, you're writing string literals. So when you create any object in Python, if you want to specify any documentation to that for your peers or for your colleagues or for the community for that matter, you can use this doc string to actually give your help on that object. People can read that doc string and can gauge what that function or that object is likely to do. All right, so let's proceed with the exercise which we have here. Now it's time for us to practice some code and complete the following steps as a part of this exercise. There are a couple of questions that that's absolutely. There's a lot of responses are there. So there's one question that what is this hat symbol? There's a question, what is this hat symbol? Actually, this is called as an hat sign. So I actually use that because in other programming language, we are using hat sign to actually, this is actually an exponentiation, okay, or an exponent for that matter. It's actually an operator. You can call that as exponential operator. It's an operator. In Python, if you write it this way, this is actually incorrect. So you have to write it 2 double times multiplication sign, and this is incorrect. And this is correct way of representation. Okay, so this will result in 4. So the second one is going to result in 4. Absolutely. So let's go ahead. That's absolutely correct. So thanks for that. Anil Kumar has actually specified that the hat symbol in Python programming, we are using it for XOR operations. Okay, so you can use that. So let's go and do this exercise. For that, I'm going to insert the cell below. So let's go and insert the cell below. And let's say I would like to solve this particular thing and say, now it's time for us to choose some value. Okay. The second point is, check the type of this variable, integer or something else. Okay, this we have already done, so we're likely to do that part again. Point number 3 is to now try to set the value for the same variable to a different value. And we have to see what happens. Okay, so now print the value of variable, my variable, and we're going to see what's going to happen. So let's say I'm going to comment this and say step 1. I'm doing this step 1. So create a variable called as my variable. I'm going to create a variable called as my variable and set the value as 3.4, which is actually a float value. Correct? This is actually a float value. And when I'm going to run this, the type of this is going to be a float. Check the type of this variable using a question mark operator and check if it shows integer or something else. I'm going to say my variable. I'm going to say a question mark, whether you do it at the start of the object or you do it at the end of the object. It's not going to matter. So I'm going to just use a shortcut called as shift enter. And you can see that the type of this variable is, it's not an integer. So we have to see whether it shows an integer or something else. It actually shows something else. So the value here is, so the type here is a float and not an integer. Okay, absolutely, perfectly fine, no problem. Let's go with the step 2. What was step 2? So we have step 2, and the step 2 says that, sorry, this was step 2, this is step 3. Let's go ahead and try with step 3. Now try to set the value of the same variable to a string called as 3.4, which we are going to do as my variable is here, and let me call it as 3.4. I think I have my keyboard is magical. It starts giving double ends. So 3.4 is a string which I've written. There's one thing that to notice here in the example, there's been given as a double quotes, and I'm using a single quote. But thankfully, Python doesn't discriminate that part. You can very well use the double quotes and the single quotes to do the same job. So it's going to do more or less the same task. So when I do this, my variable 3.4, and see what happens. Now print the value of my variable and see what happens. So I'm going to say print of my variable. You can see that it has absolutely given us the output which we had given that as an input. The reason to this is because Python is a type independent language, and it actually doesn't going to make any noise about that the earlier value which you provided was a different type and this time it's different. No, not really. So that's actually making Python a very flexible language. In some places you might see the Python is a little rigid. When it comes to NumPy calculations, you need the data in a certain structure, only in a certain dimension. Those things are there, but definitely they are also very interesting to know. So this is how we conclude the first introduction to Python in this short session. And I hope this session is generating interest in people. I hope you would want to have it more on this part, which we're going to do that soon after the break. I think we are scheduled for a break at 1 p.m. and we're going to return back after some time and going to continue with these sessions. And we're going to interact a lot. So I'm open to questions. You can put forward your questions and we'll try to communicate as far as possible.
Thank you very much, Suvir. Thank you everyone for joining in. We'll be taking a quick lunch break. Just a few things to note. We will be beginning with the next topic, which is all the basic constructs of Python, and we'll be starting with the next lesson at 2 p.m. IST. So everyone who's based in different time zones, please keep in mind it's 2 p.m. India time that the next session will start. You can go to the playlist on YouTube. It's a different link for the next video, and we will have a continuation into language semantics, followed by tuples, list, etc. We have a plethora of exciting topics to cover. And this is now your last chance to qualify for the lucky draw. So if you've not yet done it, share your Eventbrite share the Eventbrite event on LinkedIn, mark at Blob City, and there is a chance to grab 3 Amazon Echo Dots. So we'll be doing the Echo Dot lucky draw sharp at 2 p.m. It will need us some time to make sure we collect all of the entries from LinkedIn. So please make sure you make the post before 1:30 p.m. India time. So if you've not done it yet, now is the time to do it. Post it on LinkedIn, share the event on LinkedIn, and 2 p.m. sharp, when we begin the next session, we will do the lucky draw. Make sure you're in the session to claim your award, because if you're not able to identify yourself, we will pass it on to the next available person in the session. And we will be using a Python program to randomly generate the name. So it'll be a bit exciting. Now that we're learning Python, we can actually use Python for the lucky draw, right? So we apologize for all the issues you've had with the Cloudbooks. We were expecting some issues with scaling up of the servers. That's why we had requested that all of you do register in advance. We really apologize for that. If you're still having issues with Cloudbook, please do reach out to our support. There's a help icon, at the bottom. Please do write to us at support@blobcity.com. We'll make sure we have your issues resolved and you have the Cloudbook working fine, right? And yeah, that's about it. So let's connect again back at 2 p.m. And if you're having quality issues, which is blurring on YouTube, just make sure you change the setting to 720 pixel, which is half HD quality. So the video actually for us is very, very clear. The Suvir screen was very clearly visible for us. Just make sure you go and change your quality setting on YouTube to 720 pixels. The moment you do that, you should not have any blurring. It will be very clear. So have a great lunch break. We'll connect again in slightly less than 1 hour from now. And we'll start again with the further topics of Python at 2 p.m. By the end of this 14 sessions, you should all be experts in Python programming. So see you again soon. Enjoy your lunch till then. Thank you.